Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. I want to get you ready for the latest whining and grumbling and wailing and gnashing of teeth by Governor Tina Kotek of Oregon, because if you didn't already have a reason to vote for somebody else to be governor of Oregon, you should see it right now. Governor Kotek is complaining that she is $450 million short of paying for Medicaid in Oregon. Now, what she doesn't say is that she's $450 short because she's spending $750 million on Medicaid for illegal aliens, which under federal law is not allowed, but is allowed to be paid for with state dollars. But it gets worse than that, because Medicaid is also being diverted for all kinds of other things like groceries and air conditioners. And on that note, I thought we'd bring on Oregon Representative Ed Diehl, who I think if there was any justice would have been the Republican nominee for governor, but he's not. But he understands I'm going to support the current nominee, Christine Drazan, because Oregon needs some new leadership. I would have preferred Ed Diehl, but there again, that's where it goes. And you've sounded off on this, Ed, haven't you?
Yes, I have, Lars. I signed it off on an article here that was talking about Medicaid now being used for food. And like you mentioned before, it's being used for air conditioners, housing subsidies, utilities, paying storage fees. All these things are considered health-related social needs.
Yep.
And under the we've expanded. Oregon has tried to expand Medicaid. It's like this free money coming from the government, and they're using it in ways that people don't think of when they think of Medicaid. They think of Medicaid as paying for doctors, nursing care, and prescriptions. But Governor Kotek is using it way beyond what its intended purpose is.
Well, and Ed, I understand the argument they made to the Congress. They said, well, if we're going to go out and provide for Mrs. Johnson, who's 80 years old, and we give her, the money to go see a doctor, to get her prescriptions filled and all that, but she doesn't have enough food. She can't be healthy without food. So the Congress said, well, we'll allow some exceptions to spend Medicaid money on food. Or if Mrs. Johnson is living on the streets and not living in proper housing, she's not warm and dry and everything else, how can she be healthy if she's that way? And they use that to divert it, even though we already have an abundance of programs that do pay for housing, that do pay for food, that do pay for all these other things. But then they say, but we'd like to divert some Medicaid dollars to that. Isn't that what Kotek ought to be? I mean, there ought to be reporters asking her, if you're short of money to pay the regular Medicaid expenses, number one, kick all the illegal aliens off a program that under federal law they're not entitled to anyway. And number two, stop spending the money on food and air conditioners and housing and things like that. Is that unreasonable?
Not at all. Not at all. It's very reasonable. And people need to realize that yeah, we have hundreds of millions of dollars going to places that they wouldn't think is right. Like you said, over $700 million each year going to non-U.S. citizens getting free health insurance. And right now we're underpaying primary care physicians. We're underpaying many services that go to hospitals or provided in hospitals while we're paying for all these other things. And it does not make any sense.
Now, Ed, we've got
people waiting months to see a doctor, but yet we're buying food and air conditioners using those dollars.
Well, and Ed, I know sometimes you get on this show and sometimes I'll throw you a homework assignment, but try this one. If they were to say, we're going to stop the $750 million to the illegals, that more than corrects the problem. Then we're going to stop most, maybe not all, but most of the grocery money, the air conditioner money, the housing money out of Medicaid. And then we're going to go to the primary care doctors, and say, instead of paying you 65 cents on the dollar to provide medical care for people like Mrs. Johnson, we're going to pay you closer to 99 cents on the dollar, maybe in $1 on the dollar. And by doing that, all of a sudden you'd have, I think, a lot of doctors that say, oh, if you're going to pay me $1 for $1's worth of medical care that I provide, then I will take on Medicaid patients, because isn't that the problem, that people can't find a doctor who will take Medicaid because Medicaid tries to say, we want $1's worth of Medicare for 65 cents?
Yes, people need to know that doctors lose money on almost every single Medicaid patient. So there are many doctors who do not accept Medicaid anymore. They've changed their practice entirely, so they don't have to deal with it. So it's a serious problem. And so what Governor Kotek should be doing is spending those Medicaid dollars on real health-related needs. That's, doctor visits, prescriptions, and nursing. And quit paying for these things that are not directly related to care, and focus on the population that Medicaid was designed for, which was children and the elderly and people with disabilities. That's what the population Medicaid was designed to service.
I'm talking to Ed Diehl, who ran for and came very close, and I think you would have had the nomination but for Chris Dudley. But let me ask you this. Are you working at all with the Drazen campaign? Because I make suggestions to her campaign from time to time, and they usually, my suggestions aren't often taken up by people. But I'd love to see her hold Tina Kotek's feet to the fire on this and effectively force the news media to start asking Governor Kotek some of the hard questions. If she were to say, well, if we just paid for Americans to get Medicaid, which is what the program's supposed to be, and we didn't pay the foreign nationals, and we didn't pay the illegal aliens, and we didn't pay for air conditioners and groceries and all the rest of that, we'd have the money to make sure that almost every doctor in Oregon would take Medicaid. That sounds like a winning campaign issue in the next few months.
Well, it absolutely is. It was part of my campaign, and I think that is something that Christine should hold Kotek's feet to the fire on.
Will she do that, do you think?
Well, I heard her talk about some of those things on the campaign trail. I think she's pretty aligned with my thoughts, but I'm not exactly sure.
I guess I just wonder, I understand that usually politicians assume the real campaign doesn't start till after Labor Day, but it would seem like the summer would be a great time to start getting those questions asked. So then reporters who hear one candidate saying, hey, why don't we do it this way and we can solve the whole problem? Instead, folks like the Oregonian, the fish wrapper, the Daily Dead fish wrapper ran a story saying, oh yeah, costs are up because the Trump administration cut federal funding. No, costs are up $750 million, provably, because you're funding illegal aliens. How about making that part of the discussion? And the fish wrapper won't even raise the issue.
They won't raise the issue. And they also won't talk about the regulations that have been put in place by the state that make it very expensive to practice health care. In fact, we've had, people leave the state because we just make it undesirable to practice here. So there's many problems, and I hope that Kotek is held accountable for a lot of the decisions that she's made on this topic.
I kind of wonder at this point, since she's lost a lot of her union support and everything else, she seems like the candidate most likely to lose in November. I'm not going to take that for granted, but it seems like now's the time for reporters to actually dig in and demand some tough questions be answered by Tina Kotek.